Welcome, and thank you for standing by. All participants will be able to listen only until the question and answer portion of today's conference. At that time, to ask a question, please press star 1. Today's conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Pooja Patel. Thank you. You may begin.
Great. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I am Pooja Patel. I'm the program manager for the CDFI program and the Native Initiatives unit within the CDFI fund. I am also joined here by my colleagues, two of whom will be helping to present today, Matthew Pickering, who is an associate program manager, and Janet Coach, who is a senior portfolio manager. First off, I want to congratulate all of the fiscal year 2022 recipients on receiving a fiscal year 2022 TA award. We are really excited today to move forward with finalizing your assistance agreements and appreciate your patience and flexibility as we got to this point. In the interest of time, today's webinar will be an abridged version, includes an abridged version of the slides. The full slide deck is available online at the CDFI Fund website, and the link is available in your transmittal package that you received. We will also be sharing the link at the end of the presentation as well, at the end of these slides. While we will do our best to answer any questions you have, if anything comes up after this call, please feel free to submit a service request, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Janet, to get us started.
Thank you, Pooja. All right, so today we'll give an overview of the assistance agreements, and we'll go over and describe what an assistance agreement is and its purpose. We'll show you what the assistance agreement looks like and what it contains, and we'll also provide instructions on what to do with your agreement. We'll give a brief overview and review of the performance goals and measures, also known as PG&M, and what activities the TA award can be used for. And finally, we will talk through and discuss how you can make changes or request changes to your assistance agreement. All right, and so with that, we'll start, and here we'll describe here the assistance agreement. This is a legally binding contract between the CDFI fund and you as a recipient of the TA award. The terms of the assistance agreement are based on multiple factors, including the recipient's institution type, the information submitted during the application, the award type, and other factors. All CDFI and Native Initiative Program recipients must execute an assistance agreement prior to receiving their initial payment. All right, in terms of what the agreement contains, it does contain the following key components. The first is it has an annual reporting requirement and associated deadlines. It has the performance goals and measures, PG&Ms, that are associated with your award. It has authorized activities for using the TA award funds for. And finally, it has general award terms and conditions. And we'll go over some of these. All right, so please emphasize that you should read the entire assistance agreement before signing. Including recipients with awards for multiple funding rounds should read each assistance agreement closely as terms and conditions change from year to year. Recipients must also adhere to reporting requirements, PG&Ms, and any associated deadlines with that. We also recommend that you keep a copy of your agreement on your organization's files, and a copy of the agreement may also be found in your 2022 TA award record that's in AMIS. We also highly recommend that you create a calendar reminder with due dates for when your reports are needed, and you may also use the reporting schedule that's available in AMIS to find when the report due dates are. All right, so the agreement must be signed by an authorized representative listed and active in the recipient's AMIS account. This authorized representative must have the legal authority to enter into the agreement, and their title must reflect a leadership position within the organization for them to be able to sign the agreement. Consultants cannot sign the agreement on behalf of the recipient's organization. All right, so on this slide here, we note the titles that imply that these people have the signatory titles that demonstrate that they have the legal authority to sign on behalf of the organization. So that's what's listed here on the left-hand side of this slide. So any person that's in the C-suite position, so a CEO, CFO, president, vice president, director, treasurer, board secretary, those people, if they are authorized representatives, those titles do imply that they have the authority to sign on behalf of the organization. On the right-hand side of the screen, these are titles that, even though these folks show as authorized representatives in AMIS, we may need to do additional follow-up to confirm that these folks actually do have that legal authority to sign the document. So if you have your title shows analyst or a loan officer, for instance, then we would need to get additional information to confirm that you do have that authority. So this is a good time to remind everybody that if your title in AMIS does not reflect your current title and you need to make any updates, this would be the perfect time to do that before you sign your assistance agreement. Or if you're one of the people here, your title is one of these on the left-hand side of this deck, and you would like to sign the assistance agreement, but that is not reflected in AMIS, or you're not showing as an active user in AMIS, then this is also the time to make those changes. So this, like Pooja mentioned, we will have these slides are all available on our website, and you don't have to remember all these titles. Now you can always refer back to this to know whether what changes to make. All right, moving on. Before signing the assistance agreement, we urge that everybody review the document very carefully, as the CDFI fund expects recipients to fulfill all terms and conditions and then meet the deadlines therein. The CDFI fund will contact the authorized representative if additional information regarding the agreement is needed. So, for instance, some organizations would need to provide a valid certificate of good standing, and if that is not provided at the time of signing, then the staff member will be reaching back out to the authorized representative to make sure that we receive that information. All right, so this slide here, it highlights the steps that we take from the time you receive the email for having received your assistance agreement to the time you receive your payment. So the first step, and everybody on this call should have received an email notification that your assistance agreement is available in AMIS. The next step is you would review the agreement and sign it, and also provide all required documentation at that time. Once that's completed, it comes back to the CDFI fund, and we will do our compliance review in-house to make sure that there are no compliance concerns. And once that's completed, our program manager, Pooja, will countersign the agreement, and that's when the payment process begins. Once Pooja signs the assistance agreement, you will receive an email notification that a countersigned cover letter a cover page is available in AMIS. And then shortly after that, you will receive your initial payment. All right, so this is an example of how a cover page looks like. So this would have at the top section of it would have your CDFI fund award number, your UEI number, your employment identification number. It would also have the announcement date, which for all TA awardees, that date is September 26th, 2022, and that date is also the date by which the performance period of performance begins. In the bottom right of the assistance cover page, you will have the organization name and the signature of the person, the authorized representative that signed this assistance agreement. And also on the bottom left side of the page, you would have the program manager's signature. You will have the federal award date, which we will go over in additional details coming up here shortly. In addition to that, the very bottom page of that cover page of the assistance agreement, you will have recipient information. This would include the entity type. It would include the total award, the TA award amount, and also the initial TA payment amount that you requested. So we highly suggest that you review all the information on your assistance agreement, and if there's anything that does not align with what is currently with your organization, then reach out to us through a service request to make sure that that is corrected before you sign the assistance agreement. Okay, and with that, I will pass it now to my colleague Matthew to talk us through the next section of the presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Janet. And welcome everybody. For those of you who have received a TA or an FA award before, you'll probably be familiar with performance goals and measures. But for those who aren't, performance goal and measure, as Janet mentioned, commonly referred to as PG&Ms, are benchmarks that all recipients must meet in order to remain in compliance with their assistance agreement. But to be clear, remaining in compliance with your assistance agreement implies more than just meeting your PG&M benchmarks, but you also are expected to maintain timely report submissions and, if applicable for your organization, have unqualified audit opinions and an absence of material weaknesses or findings in the single audit. So every technical assistance agreement is going to contain certain PG&Ms. Those will vary based upon your organization type, whether you're certified or not, et cetera. So goal 1 is a goal that's going to be common for every TA recipient, and that requires the recipient to expend the technical assistance funds for the purposes set forth in the assistance agreement. Goal 2 applies to sponsoring entity recipients only and requires those organizations to establish a legal entity that will become certified as a CDFI eventually, and to add it as a co-recipient to its assistance agreement at a date specified in the agreement. The third goal that some recipients will see in their assistance agreement, this will apply only to uncertified recipients. You will have a requirement to submit a CDFI certification application to the CDFI fund and to obtain certification as a CDFI by a date specified in the assistance agreement. So read your PG&Ms closely, make sure you understand all the expectations for performance goals, and always reach out to us if you have any questions. So this is a sample of what a PG&M will look like in your assistance agreement. You can see on the left-hand side the PG&M number. So in this case, this is the goal number 1, which is, again, going to apply to all TA recipients. A description of the PG&M will be found on the right-hand side, as well as applicable benchmarks. And as you can see in this particular example, everyone is required to spend 90% of your initial TA payment amount by the end of the first year of your period of performance, and to spend 100% of the total TA award amount by the end of the period of performance. So we want to take a moment to talk about the certification PG&M. In FY 2022, all uncertified TA recipients are going to receive an extra year to obtain CDFI certification. Now, how that appears to you as the recipient will vary based upon whether you have a prior technical assistance award. So before we get into this any further, I just want to make it ultra clear that this discussion is not applicable to any TA recipients who are already certified CDFIs. There won't be any difference to your assistance agreement from what you would have expected to receive in prior years. But if you are currently an uncertified TA recipient with no prior TA awards, and this also applies to sponsoring entities, your FY 2022 assistance agreement will reflect an extra year to become certified. If you are a TA recipient in FY 22 who has prior technical assistance awards, your prior assistance agreement will be amended to reflect the extra year. And then, in turn, your FY 22 assistance agreement will reflect that revised date that gives you an extra year to become certified. So there are a couple of things that every recipient needs to do in order to receive award payments. So the first is to electronically sign your assistance agreement and to upload all required documentation into AMIS. If you're an organization that happens to be an unregulated group, like a loan fund, for instance, you'll be required to submit a certificate of good standing. That certificate of good standing will be from the Secretary of State for your state of formation. And has to be dated within 180 days prior to the federal award date of the assistance agreement. And what that means is that it must be dated 180 days prior to the date that the CDFI fund countersigns your agreement. And if you go back, remembering the slide that Janet had displayed earlier, there are a couple of steps that happen between the time that you sign the agreement and submit your required documentation and us countersigning that agreement. So with that said, please make sure that your certificate of good standing is new and fresh, and best practice would be that that certificate of good standing is less than 150 days old by the time you submit it to the CDFI fund. If you have a certificate of good standing that is older than that, you're going to want to take some time now to reach out to your Secretary of State and make sure that you get a new up-to-date version of that certificate of good standing. In addition to that, you must maintain compliance with the terms and conditions of any prior awards from the CDFI fund. And we want to make sure that we also emphasize that your banking information needs to be accurate and up-to-date in SAM.gov. This banking information is required to be updated every 6 months. So make sure you are keeping track of your banking information in SAM.gov and updating it if necessary. And then also, finally, if your entire award amount is not dispersed in the initial payment, that is to say, if you've requested an initial payment that's less than the entire award amount, you'll eventually have to submit a subsequent payment request at least 30 days prior to the end of your period of performance to receive the final drawdown on the award. So in prior years, there was a table in an assistance agreement for TA that listed authorized technical assistance activities and corresponding dollar amounts. We no longer have this schedule in the technical assistance agreement. However, you still must use your TA money for authorized technical assistance activities. Those activities include compensation for personal services or fringe benefits, training and education, travel, professional services, equipment, supplies, and if and only if you are a sponsoring entity, you may also use TA for incorporation costs. Official definitions for all of these terms are found in the general terms and conditions of your assistance agreement if you have any questions about what constitutes any one of these particular categories. and also further guidance related to allowable uses and permissible modifications to your TA activities and amounts are found in sections 3.8 and 7.9 of the agreement. So, what should you do if you think you need to make a change to your assistance agreement? Before your assistance agreement has been executed, you may request what we call a modification to the assistance agreement. And you would do that by submitting a service request. In accordance with Section 7.9 of your assistance agreement, you may also request an amendment to your assistance agreement after it has been executed, and those would also be submitted via service request. I would definitely encourage everyone, if you are reading through your assistance agreement and you already think that you need to modify something about that agreement, please don't sign it. Please submit a service request and request a modification. Those are much easier and simpler to process than amendments. So highly encourage everyone, again, strong argument to read the entire assistance agreement and make sure you're comfortable with everything in there. But I do want to add quickly that we do not modify or otherwise amend anything within the general terms and conditions of an assistance agreement. Those are going to be constant and consistent across every recipient's agreement. And finally, the CDFI fund will approve modification or amendment requests on a limited basis at the CDFI fund's discretion. So please do not assume that all modification or amendment requests that are submitted will automatically be approved. You can find additional information by continuing to monitor the CDFI program and Native Initiatives section of our website, cdfifund.gov, in order to access additional guidance and webinars. And then all of these materials, a sample assistance agreement template, the unabridged version of today's presentation, which contains lots more slides and helpful information, is also available. And a recording of today's webinar will also be available when it is finished on the Step 4 Closing and Disbursement page of both the CDFI program and Native Initiatives sites on our webpage. Next slide, please. So for any questions regarding general terms and conditions, reporting requirements, or allowable uses of funds, please submit a service request in AMIS. That's always the best way to reach us, unless you have a question for us today, which leads me to the next point. Thanks, everybody, for attending. We really appreciate your presence, and congratulations again on getting your FY 2022 Technical Assistance Award. And I'm now going to hand it back over to our operator, Julie, to open it up for questions.
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. You will be prompted to record your first and your last name. Please unmute your phone when recording your name, and to withdraw your question, press star 2. Once again, to ask a question, please press star 1. One moment. Our first question comes from Gloria Washington. Your line is open.
What disbursements require an attorney involvement? There were some categories for the disbursement, but it was not mentioned in this presentation.
Hi, Gloria. I would encourage you to submit that question via service request so that we can make sure that we get appropriate guidance on that for you. Does that work for you?
No, well, it kind of said that there was loans needed to have a different kind of presentation, and then it said, there were two areas, and I'm just trying to make sure because it was not mentioned here that deposits required an attorney. Is
okay.
that you understand what I'm asking about the?
Your award will be in the form of a grant. All technical assistance awards are in the form of a grant. So in the financial assistance program, some awards are in different forms based upon the type of matching funds that are submitted at the time of application. So in the case of technical assistance recipients, your disbursement would be in the form of a grant.
And it'll be deposited right into our bank account through SAM.
Yes, I believe that's the case.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry, I do have one more question. Is there a limit on or a percentage of compensation?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't make out the question.
Is there a dollar limit or a percentage limit on what we can use for compensation from the grant?
No, you can expend your technical assistance award for any of the eligible uses.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Our next question comes from Garrett Graver. Your line is open.
Hello. Thank you for that presentation. This is kind of a silly technical question. But we've been having trouble locating where the assistant agreement is in AMIS. So if there's any kind of documentation to where that would be, or if there's any just kind of like guidance on where we would find that so that we can review and sign it, that would be greatly appreciated.
Sure. So someone from your organization, hopefully, will have received an email at the time when your assistance agreement was ready to view. This email would have contained several attachments. And one of those attachments would be instructions for accessing and signing your assistance agreement. So please check your inboxes and see who received that email, and that email will contain an appropriate attachment telling you how to find your assistance agreement and what to do to sign it. If you're unable to find that information or you didn't receive the email, please submit a service request, and we can be sure to forward you the appropriate attachment that describes how to do those things.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Lesman Williams-Mitchell. Your line is open.
Oh, hi. Good afternoon. Thank you again for the presentation. Question regarding the Certificate of Good Standing. As a federally chartered credit union, I presume that's not required for us because we're regulated by NCUA?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, as a federal credit union, you are not required to have the Certificate of Good Standing.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Our next question comes from Emma Simpson. Your line is open.
Hi, thanks so much. So our agreement states that we need to have a federal single audit completed for the current fiscal year that ends on June 30, 2023, but neither our parent nor our loan fund will have spent $750,000 of federal funds within this current fiscal year. So is that still a requirement despite not meeting that threshold?
Hi. Sorry, we have someone from our compliance unit, but I think that they got cut off. So, but I can try to answer that question.
Can you hear me?
Would you mind just, yes. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you, Matthew.
Hi.
If you do not meet that threshold, you will not be responsible or required to submit the single audit.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mia.
Our next question comes from Demi Beck. Your line is open.
Hi. Thank you so much for this helpful webinar. I just have a hopefully quick question. And we would like to request clarification for the language in Section 413 of the award agreement regarding discrimination. Our understanding of this section is that it would only apply to the recipients who have pending proceedings that include allegations of discrimination. Is that correct?
Hi. Thank you for that question. I would encourage you to submit a service request for clarification about that sort of language in the general terms and conditions. That would enable us to route it to the appropriate party in the CDFI fund and get some weigh-in from our legal department. So if you wouldn't mind just submitting that as a service request, we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Yes, we have submitted that as a service request, and we will be looking forward to hearing from you all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Ashley Thurston. Your line is open.
Hi, yes, thank you for the presentation. I just need some clarification. We applied to be a CDFI last year, and we have not heard back yet, and I just wanted to see how long that would take before we hear back.
Unfortunately, we can't really comment on that during today's webinar. If you have a question about the status of a certification application, I would encourage you to reach out through service request to the certification unit at the CDFI fund. So apologies, we can't really offer any additional information on certification apps.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. As a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1. Our next question comes from Frank Crump. Your line is open.
Thank you very much. My question is regarding the Certificate of Good Standing. I'm confused with regards to the 150, 180 days prior to. Can you go over that once again?
Sure. Thanks for the question. And I know this is a little bit complicated. So the requirement for your assistance agreement is that the Certificate of Good Standing needs to be dated no more than 180 days prior to the federal award date. So the federal award date is the date that the CDFI fund countersigns your assistance agreement. And so this federal award date is going to be some period of time after you sign your agreement and submit your required documentation. So there needs to be a little bit of a buffer there. So basically our general rule of thumb is your Certificate of Good Standing at the time that you submit it should be no more than 150 days old. And that is to account for the amount of time that it takes for us to process the internal approval of your assistance agreement. And what we don't want to have happen is for you to submit a Certificate of Good Standing that's 165 days old, and then by the time it gets the counter signature stage, it's more than 180 days old, and then we have to reject it, and we have to go back and get you to give us a brand new one at that point. So it's just an effort, a preemptive effort for us to try and make sure that your Certificate of Good Standing is still current by the time your agreement is countersigned by the CDFI fund. Does that make sense?
On that basis, I would assume that if I were to get a certificate tomorrow and utilize that, then that would certainly should be within your 180-day period of signing on your side. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Marianne Sabian. Your line is open.
Hello. I thought at the beginning of the presentation, which I do appreciate that I attended, we talked about the starting period of performance, and I thought someone said it was September 26, 2022. Seeing that it's March, does that mean that it's 1 year, or would you have the option to request an extension for the grant?
Great. Thank you for that. Question. Pooja, are you online? I can hand this over to you.
Sorry, I was having a little bit of trouble unmuting and muting. Do you mind repeating the question really quickly, and then I can take a shot at it?
Well, somebody mentioned at the beginning of the presentation mentioned a specific starting date of 9/26/22 as to the period of performance start date, and I don't know if that's general or just for an example. But either way, since it's March, would the period of performance have started relatively recent? Because I mean we're 5 months into it, so I didn't know if we just have 12 months, or is there a potential that we can get an extension if it indeed started in September?
Yeah, so I think basically any expenses that you have incurred since 9/26 would be eligible for reimbursement through this grant. So I think that's where the 9/26 date comes from. 9/26 was the date that we announced the TA awards, and that's why that date is there, if that makes sense. Does that help at all?
So then does that mean technically it would end at 9/25/23 a year, or would it?
It wouldn't be ending at the end of this year, regardless. It should be in the assistance agreement. You should have your period of performance end date, and it would not be a 1 year period of performance.
Okay.
But maybe take another look at that, and if you do have any follow-up questions regarding the period of performance, we'd be happy to answer them or kind of talk with you about the next steps. But yeah, I think the main thing related to the 9/26 date is that you can, any expenses that were incurred after that date are eligible uses of funds and can be incurred under this grant.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yep, of course. You're welcome.
At this time, I am showing no questions.
As we wait for people to come up with additional questions, I wanted to navigate everybody to the CDFI Fund website, and where you'll find all the information that we've talked about here to help you with your assistance agreements with the closing and disbursement. So you can see my screen. If you get to the CDFI Fund landing page, you would go down to programs, and then you would either go to the CDFI Fund program itself, or you go to Native Initiatives. And if you click on that and scroll down to the bottom, you will go to the section 4, step 4, closing and disbursement, and that will take you to the page with all the presentation material from today's webinar, as well as other information about the closing and your assistance agreements, including the template and all that, how to access AMIS, and some of the questions that came about. Yes.
Janet, just a quick heads up, the screen is not updating and has not changed. So I know you're trying to show folks the navigation, so I just wanted to give you a quick heads up that that's not coming through. But you can go ahead and finish. I think the primary point is that, the primary point
Pooja,
being
do you see my screen? Do you see my screen now, Pooja?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
If you want to just do that quickly again to show folks.
Yes, sure. Thank you for that, Pooja. Yeah, so when you get to the landing page for the CDFI fund, you would go down to programs, and then under that, you can either go to the CDFI program itself, or you can go to Native Initiatives. And then when you click there and scroll down to the bottom, you will go to step 4, which is closing and disbursement. And this is where you'll find all the information that we just talked about, including the template, today's webinar, the longer version of today's webinar, instructions on how to use AMIS and how to request subsequent payments, any of that information that are related to your closing and disbursements of funds, you'll find it there.
Great. Thank you, Janet. Julie, are there any additional questions?
I am showing no questions.
Okay. Well, 2 additional notes I just wanted to to just reiterate for folks. I know there was a question earlier about getting information in AMIS and getting emails. I think just a reminder to everyone, if you haven't already, add AMIS as a safe sender, and that way, you can make sure that you can get any emails in the future, any important emails related to your award or any other updates or information. I think also one other thing is to make sure that your authorized representative is up to date, because the emails go directly to the authorized representative. So again, making sure that in AMIS, your authorized representative is up to date, and making sure that that individual has added AMIS to their safe senders list so that they can get future emails. And then I think, again, I just want to stress again that it is very, very important to read through your entire assistance agreement. These are the terms and conditions, include the terms and conditions of your award. So please read through that carefully and reach out if you have any questions about anything in there. We want to make sure that you are looped in and understand your assistance agreement and don't have any questions before we move forward with executing it. And then again, a reminder to make sure that your SAM.gov information is up to date on a regular basis. That will impact your ability to get any future disbursements and even the initial disbursements. So make sure that your SAM.gov account stays up to date and you are current with it. It is also a very time-consuming and longer process once it's expired to get it renewed. So it's always good to stay up to date with your SAM.gov information and account and make sure that that you are one step ahead of the game and your information and account information is accurate and up to date. I think those are all of the closing thoughts we have, unless others on the line have anything else. I will go ahead and thank everyone for being on today's call, and have a good rest of your day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your participation. Participants, you may disconnect at this time.